The man knelt down and settled comfortably within his frame, considering the old bones which his body was home to. Chapter 19. The freak he would become as a man. Evan could not have known how long he had been unconscious. However long it was not long enough. As he awoke and gradually gained awareness, he became aware of the pain flooding his consciousness as it gnawed at his face. He was bleeding from cuts, some of which had gravel and grit embedded into them. Big lumps were on his forehead, and on the lumps were more cuts, and in the cuts more gravel. His nose was twisted over to one side of his face, and his top lip was grotesquely swollen. He lifted his arm to feel how bad his face must look, and then noticed the tip of his thumb was hanging off, barely managing to remain a part of his hand. Only a flap of skin secured it to his thumb. He touched his face, which had previously been handsome, and his fingers traced his horrific injuries. He was sickened. "Oh no, I'm a monster," he told himself, as the state of his terrible injuries became apparent. He turned his head in shame away from the woman who stood over him. Nobody's going to want me now, and he resigned himself to a life of loneliness. Faced, and a woman and an old gentleman stood over Evan, looking down at the injured man, while Woody remained fast asleep on the bed, his head pillowed on the canvas bag, oblivious to the freak he would become as a man. "What a frightful mess," said Fate. Then he bent down for a closer inspection of Evan's unsightly injuries. "What a mess," he repeated, confirming his diagnosis. Evan wondered why Fate had allowed this to happen, and hoped it was not some terrible lesson he was being taught, perhaps for the insensitive way in which he had treated some women in his past. "Can you help him?" Fate asked. "I can certainly give it a good go, try my best as it were," replied the old gentleman, whose words rang out so rhythmically that his vocal cords seemed to positively chime. The man knelt down and settled comfortably within his frame, considering the old bones which his body was home to. He reached out to touch Evan's injured face. Evan drew back in anticipation of the forthcoming pain that physical contact would surely bring. In order to make Evan more comfortable and take his patient's attention away from the forthcoming facial repairs, the old man gestured that the woman should support Evan's head. This she did by kneeling behind him, raising his head, then sliding the knee forward to provide him with an anatomical headrest. The old man stroked Evan's forehead, and pieces of gravel ran down the sides of his face as it came loose from his cuts. The cuts healed and the lumps subsided. He ran his thumb and index finger along the length of the twisted nose, and although Evan could hear it clicking back into place, he felt no pain. The old healer pulled back a moment to check the alignment of the nose and judged it as being not quite straight. He ran his thumb and finger along its length, giving it back the linear contour which it usually possessed. Gently he pressed on Evan's cheekbone until he popped it back into place, and then he smoothed away any remaining lumps which the cheek did not normally possess. This helped Evan's vision a little, but his eyes were still swollen, adversely affecting his ability to see. The old gentleman passed his thumbs across Evan's eyes, compassionately caressing the swollen lids. 2 or 3 times the thumbs passed over the eyelids, each time reducing the swelling and the soreness. "Close your eyes and rest them while we work on your lip," the old gentleman told him. Evan's lip was swollen to such an extent that had he tried to speak to thank his healer, the words would have come out all slurred. perhaps giving the wrong indication as to why Evans seemed incapable of successfully negotiating a steep road with no other obstacles to overcome other than his own 2 feet. The old gentleman's hand squeezed at the swelling until Evan's lip regained its original size. I wonder who he is and where he acquired his incredible skills, thought Evan, as the fingers finished their medicinal repairs. Even Fate marvelled at the pharmaceutical magic which was being performed. Evan could see quite well now, and he looked at the benefactor, who was nursing him back to normality. The first thing that struck Evan about the healer was the outfit which he wore. The sun made the brilliance of the gown's whiteness reflect brightly into Evan's eyes, and he found himself squinting as he tried to make out some symbols upon its material. Black lines about 2 inches long made up an unusual design on the gown. Some of the symbols were grouped together, while others stood alone. Evan's eyes were still a little tender, and he was having trouble focusing on the black symbolic lines before him. V, he said to himself. That's a V. And that's a 1, a number 1. I think that one's a multiplication sign. And those are... And then he got it. Roman numerals, he realized, as the symbols became clear to him, both in his mind and to his eyes. They are Roman numerals. The gown fastened down the front with 12 small, round black and white buttons. As Evan looked at the buttons more closely, he noticed something truly bizarre about them. He lifted his head up from the supported knee and peered in disbelief at the buttons. Each one had a face of a clock, and each clock's face told an hour's different time from the preceding one. Whatever next, he wondered, and he lay his head back down. Curiosity gave Evan another nudge, so again he lifted his head a little in order that he may observe the old gentleman further. The thick white hair that avalanched about the old man's head led Evan to wonder if, could it be Merlin, that was performing magic spells upon his face. He certainly looks old enough, he thought, yet his hands, although covered in brown age spots, moved around like a young person's. Grey whiskers covered the chin and the jaw, while another mass of hair formed a large moustache, which contained occasional dark strands, giving a clue as to its original pre-grey colour. He's very old, Evan thought, and then wondered if it could be Florence Nightingale's father, who was tending to his wounds. It would hardly be a surprise, with the way in which things around here seem to bear no resemblance to the laws of physics or the realms of scientific normality. Evan realized that he had spent so much time examining the man that he had not even taken a glance at the lady whose knee was cushioning his very confused head. Not wanting to appear ungrateful for the support that she was lending, Evan thought it best if he at least looked at the woman, just to be polite. He dared hardly open his eyes again for fear of what he might see, but decided he would risk it anyway, for the sake of good manners. He was pleased that he had given in to his politeness, as the woman was a pleasure to behold. There was not a single blemish upon her skin, not even a hint of an imperfection caused by a spot that may have once occupied a place on her flawless complexion. Evan wondered if it was the clearness of her skin that helped accentuate the blueness of her eyes. For one bizarre moment he found himself wondering whether, if she ever had occasion to cry, she would shed droplets of liquid sapphire. Crying, though, seemed to be the last thing on her mind. Her demeanour was possessed of calmness and tranquillity, as she gently moved her head and upper body to and fro, as though swaying to the rhythm of a silent lullaby. As she gently moved backwards and forwards, Evan, now recovering favourably from his fall, noticed the woman's curvaceous splendour as it rose and fell in time with the soundless song which he now swayed to. He could not help but notice her curves, for the long flowing dress which she wore was a shifting array of shades of blue, which occasionally took on the quality of transparency. Evan's attention was drawn away from the lovely lady by his healer, who was checking his patient over one last time for any further injuries which needed repairing. "Nearly missed that one," the old man chimed, referring to the almost dismembered thumb tip. Taking hold of the thumb, he studied it for a moment and considered giving it a sharp tug in order to pull it off. On second thoughts, he decided to simply press the tip back on top of the thumb, whereupon it appeared to instantly heal. "That's my job finished," said the healer. "Now, if you wouldn't mind cleaning him up, we can be on our way." The benevolent nurse proceeded with the task of wiping away the blood from Evan's face, using her dress. Even the congealed mess that had mattered into his hair was washed away by the lapping motions of the woman's dress. Evan was surprised at how efficiently the material managed to clean off the dried-on blood, even more so by how the dress somehow managed to remain clean itself. "That's amazing," Evan was about to say, then changed his mind and decided that nothing ought to amaze him anymore. So instead, he decided on a simple response and said, "Thank you." An unassuming nod of "You're welcome" was the only reply which Evan received from the woman. Fate, who was standing with the old man, looked down at Evan and asked if he intended staying there all day. Evan was unresponsive, as he was preoccupied with the curvaceous splendour of the wound-cleaning nurse, whereas the woman was not so taken with Evan, gave his head a nudge with her knee. "Your friend is speaking to you," she informed him. "What? Oh, sorry. What did you say?" "I asked if you were staying there all day," repeated Fate, thinking that there was a time and a place for everything, and that it would be a good idea for Evan to stop embarrassing himself. He momentarily wondered if it may have been an idea to leave Evan with his injuries, in order to make him learn how to use his character over his good looks and to be more respectful when dealing with the female gender. "No, I was just about to get up," lied Evan, and then thought to himself how laying there all day might not be such a bad idea after all. He cautiously raised himself onto one knee, half expecting pain to soar through one of his legs. It never, so he tentatively stood up. "Cheerio!" rang out the old gentleman's voice as he helped his companion to her feet. "Must fly," he added, and with that he whisked the woman up the road, away from Fate, Evan, and the sleeping boy. Fearing he may never see them again, and realizing that he had not thanked the old-timer for his outstanding healing work, Evan called after them, Wait a moment, please." The old gentleman stopped, turned around, and then in no uncertain terms told Evan, "I do not wait for mortal men." "Nor I," said the woman, and then they turned and left, confirming the fact that time and tide wait for no man.